the World of Darkness team are releasing a Sabbat book for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, and I'm gonna today tell you all about it, what we know about the contents of the book, and what we know about the Sabbat sect. Already they exist in the world, and there have been little tidbits scattered around the books that have already been released, so I'm gonna chat about them here and see what cool new things we're gonna get. I try my best to make these videos as welcoming and accommodating to people who don't know that much about Vampire the Masquerade as possible, so I'm gonna start by going, what the hell are the Sabbat? Well, it's pretty simple. They are a sect of vampires in the World of Darkness universe who are organized in the same way that the Camarilla is a group that believes in neo-feudalism and the elders being at the top and controlling the lesser, weaker, younger ones with the powers and the politics. And then there's the Anarchs, who are, as their name suggests, a bit anarchistic. They are decentralized compared to the Camarilla. They fight against the Camarilla in a lot of ways. Then there's the Sabbat, who have gone through a lot of different changes, but in the most recent version, it sounds like they are, I think, Justin Achille, one of the writers, said they are a medieval death cult who indoctrinate their members. And a couple of their core beliefs is that they have given over themselves to their vampiric side entirely. They believe that that's where their strength lies. They don't care about the masquerade. They don't care about hiding what they are. And they do all sorts of atrocious acts in service to their beast, their vampiric side. They also believe that the other vampires are tools of the most ancient original vampires, the antediluvians, the ones who created the clans, and so they kill and eat other vampires if they believe that they're going to get in their way. They're going to stop them in their quest to destroy these antediluvians. It's really cool, and my favorite bit about this is that in a wonderful bit of hypocrisy, they praise Cain, the first ever vampire, the one who is the most ancient, and they aspire to be like Cain and bring themselves closer to Cain by eating other vampires, by doing horrendous things, and it's a wonderful bit of hypocrisy that I love in that kind of belief system. And to this end, they don't have the same kind of woe is me moral quandaries about being a vampire that other characters do. So if you're a Nosferatu and you're like, oh, I'm horrendously ugly and the beast is showing itself on my face and I cannot go out in the light lest people see me and reveal my true nature, they're like, nah mate, I'm gonna kill lots of people and do lots of horrible things and eat whatever I want and kill whatever I want, and just, I might be ugly as sin, but that's other people's problem if they find me. And I think that's a really compelling kind of story to have in your game. So that's what the Sabbat are. And what is this book intending to bring to us? Well, a lot of older players are going to be salty about this. This book is not intended, like other books before it, to allow you to play as a member of the Sabbat. There've been a Camarilla and an Anarch book and like Chicago by Night, which gives you other clans to play as, but they are all revolving around this kind of the moral quandaries and questions that you might have about being a vampire and how close to humanity you are versus how much of a vampire you might become. Because the Sabbat don't do that, they're intending to just make them antagonists. So this is more of a monster manual than it is anything else. If we're thinking in D&D terms, this is a monster manual. It's a rule book for DMs to use to create these antagonists, to create vampires that are like the boogeymen to other vampires, including in that a whole bunch of powers, a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm going to look add what we know already, what we have been told in a classic internet way, and that is a numbered list of questions. Number 1 being, what powers will they have? Well, I watched an interview on the World of Darkness News Twitch channel with Justin Achille, who is one of the writers, and he described one power which lets you summon your own blood from wherever it might be. Now, I don't know whether, like, you draw a lovely painting on a wall somewhere in your blood and then it kind of floats across the room to you. But they definitely did describe it being ripped out of, like, if you've got a ghoul, if you've fed your blood to a human, you take that back. I'm assuming if it hasn't been used. And because these are powers that are probably going to be usable by players, but also used a lot by the Sabbat, tearing the blood out of someone, generally I like to keep my blood on my insides, and if it goes on the outsides, then I would become a bit of a useless dead weight. If you really, really desperately need it, I can imagine a player really desperately needing blood in, like, the final moments of a battle or something, and they're like, I need this extra last push, and you sacrifice the life of someone or something that you've given your blood to. That's probably going to cause a big shift in your humanity. That's like a horrible act. But on the other side of the coin, the Sabbat, they're like, ha, it's my blood now. Or again, which probably won't affect them quite as much. And yeah, you'll get stains as a player. So I'm imagining these powers are going to be really, really strong, but like, they're not going to be good for players that use them a lot. They're going to, like, turn into like frenzying beasts. They're gonna, like, end up with no humanity at all, which is kind of part of the horror of the game. And I think I'm really looking forward to seeing what the powers are. Everyone likes new powers. They're cool, you get to see them used, you get to use them. And aside from, like, literal blood powers, the Sabbat operate differently in that they're going to end up with some things that we've seen in previous editions of the game that are called, I think they're called rite, which is one of those very fancy words. I'm assuming it's just like a ritual that enforces loyalty on the members of the Sabbat. And one, which is probably the best known, is called the Voldry, where you all mix your blood and you all drink it, and then you all have a stronger enforced bond to each other. It instills loyalty, but it crushes individuality, which is a very, very cool little tidbit there. Like, they're all working together in sync, but it's also extremely dangerous and kind of gross and dehumanizing, which is fascinating for a story. And on the being less of a human side of things, I quite enjoy the suggestion that Justin made in this interview, where he was like, they don't even necessarily have to use words to communicate with each other. They're like, click, and they read each other's body language and, like, do grunts like animals. I like that as a concept to make them scarier. Like, the less you're able to comprehend the thing that you're against, the less easily you are able to counter it or just kind of predict what it's going to do. These things, they don't talk normally, they don't act predictably, and that makes them scary, and that's one of the kind of unknowable horrors of the dark kind of tropes that I love in horror. It's so much fun. And having rules for that is going to really enforce what I would like to do with a book like the Sabbat, which brings us to question 2. How will they be different? How will a Sabbat vampire be different? Well, one of the ways is that instead of following humanity, which when you do horrible things kind of puts you into this state of just being a beast, an animal working on impulse and drinking blood whenever you want, which sounds a lot like the Sabbat, but they're more controlled. They're able to decide when and where to kill or to eat or whatever, as opposed to the whites of vampires, the vampires that have lost their humanity. The Sabbat are actually in control of themselves, which the others are not. Humanity is replaced by these paths of enlightenment, and they have such wonderful names. They're clearly moral codes that the vampires follow to are, I guess, possibly indoctrinated into, like brainwashed into, to stop them just going completely feral and like being useless to everyone else. They have mentioned, like name dropped a couple of these, which one is the Path of Cathari. I'm just reading notes here because I don't know much about the paths. Which is a philosophy of excess. Every vice, every thing that I can read from the White Wolf Wiki online is, it's a philosophy of dualism where good is represented by the soul and evil is represented by physicality. And vampires are a part of that because they don't have a soul and they are purely physical beings that are there, so they might as well give in to excess and tempt others to do that as well, which is a very interesting alien mindset. And I think that's something I really want to see, is that alien mindset, again, to stop my players fully comprehending exactly what these other vampires are up to. Like, why would they do any of that? Is it just random? Is it just impulse? Or are they planning something grander? You can't really tell. So giving that kind of alien motivation is really cool. Another one was the Path of the Inner Voice, which is a philosophy of controlling your inner beast by amassing control and punishing failure. So, see, some of these things I like because the philosophies seem on the surface very similar to things that vampires would do anyway. You have a venturer in your campaign who's like, I would like to control this entire city, and I will do it, and I will punish those who fail me and reward those who work for me, and that sort of thing. But like, it's twisted and wrong and different, and I really hope to see more of that, because, well, like right in this moment, I can't think of all the things that could encompass, but these writers have either experience with the world of darkness already, or ideas that they have brought with them from their many travels of writing. I don't know. that can help us all inform how we run our games. So I think there was also one called the Path of the Sun that's new. I don't know where I got that. I got that from another community member who mentioned it, but I haven't seen it anywhere else. So that's a maybe. That's a strong maybe. Other ways that the Sabbat might be different are that they hopefully will have slight mechanical changes. Obviously, humanity won't be a thing for them, so they won't have to worry about that. But how do they work on hunger? Are they like always at hunger 5? Like if they smell blood, are they more likely to just pounce on it? I don't know, because they have a different relationship with their beasts. So I imagine that there's going to be guidelines and rules for how Sabbat vampires work with that, because hunger is the thing that tempts you to and like limits you as a player about like how many dice you could re-roll, yes, but also like what your priorities are. If you're at hunger 5, you're going to want to feed. If you're at hunger 1, you're going to want to like enact your evil plans. Where on that scale does a Sabbat vampire come? Does it even matter to them? I have no idea, and I'm fascinated to see that. Question number 3. What are the Sabbat doing in the Middle East? There's a wonderful bit of lore that the 5th edition has introduced, whereby old vampires are being beckoned to the Middle East by a mysterious force. The older you are, the stronger the pull. And we've learned that the Sabbat are also there fighting what they call the Gehenna War or the Gehenna Crusade, which is like an apocalyptic fight that they believe is the end of the world. And in that fight, the vampires that are being beckoned to that place are fighting the Sabbat and being eaten by them. The more blood the Sabbat members consume, the more powerful they get. And the what more worried the other sects are that eventually they're going to be super powerful and just trot on back over to America or Europe or other parts of the world and wreck everyone. So it's like a beautiful, scary, ominous, distant terror that you're like, do we worry about that now or do we worry about it when they're here? Is it going to be a problem? Will it sort itself out? Let's hope that it sorts itself out. And I really want more details about that because they're pretty thin on the ground at the moment. There's lots of stories about the various clans either becoming part of the Sabbat at various points in their history or running away from the Sabbat. In the case of the La Sombra, if you've read Chicago by Night, then you know that part of that book contains the rules for playing as the La Sombra, who are the Shadowmancers and the controllers of the Abyss. They used to be a big part of the Sabbat sect, but their leading council, the Amici Noctis, which I assume translates to Friends of the Night, which is quite a nice name, actually. Their leading council decided this war is pretty dangerous. This Gehenna War thing, not for us. We're all gonna die to ancient vampires, because there's this really nice bit in Chicago by Night where they're like, yes, we celebrate the one vampire that comes back like powerful from destroying and eating Methuselah, an ancient vampire, but we forget about the 20 other vampires that died in that attempt. So what happens to their blood? Where does that go? Who's that feeding? That's not a good trade. And I don't want to be around when the check comes due. It's a really fascinating story of, there's a character, a La Sombra, called Tally, who was a big part of the Sabbat, and he describes, if you just go and read Chicago by Night, it's like my favorite vampire 5th edition book. It's brilliant. There's this really great story of Tally, who controlled a pack of Sabbat vampires. They come up against this ancient vampire, and they tried to kill him, but it just had more of abyssal darkness for a mouth that sucked everything in, and he was the only one to escape. And he was disinclined to attempt to fight it again, so he was fully in on the La Sombra rejoining or trying to join up with the Camarilla for the first time ever, who are previously their mortal enemies. So if we get a more clearer picture of exactly what the horrors are that the La Sombra were escaping, that would be really cool. Perhaps even possible explanations for what it is exactly that is summoning these ancient vampires to the Middle East through the beckoning. There are suggestions for that in various books that have already been printed, like the Hecata don't feel that pull, and so there's some speculation on that in the Cults of the Blood Gods book. Question number 4. Who are they? Like, what clans are they? Will they include other clans, bloodlines, that sort of thing? From the sounds of it, I don't think they're going to include other bloodlines in the book. I can't be 100% sure, but there's been no mention of any specific kind of, for instance, Tzimisce clan, or there's going to be La Sombra and Tzimisce in the Sabbat, but fascinatingly, the change is that while I imagine you could put any clan in the Sabbat, because of this kind of brainwashing that they do to like fight against the ancients, the ones who created the clans, they do everything they can to eliminate the clan element of a person's personality, which is a really cool take on it. In previous editions, you would have this thing called anti-tribu, which is like a Malkavian anti-tribu who rejected everything Malkavian. But you are a vampire. In Sabbat, you're just a Sabbat. That's all you are. You reject the lineage that you have been, I guess, born into, in a sense, and because of how hated and despised these ancient puppet masters are. And that really aligns with some of the stuff you can find in the V5 supplement, player's guide, about the Tzimisce. Where does it say? It says lots of Tzimisce in their ranks have helped found the Sabbat, and among the Black Hand, which is kind of, I guess, another name for the sect, that it's a nigh medieval mindset that drives the grasping Tzimisce dragons to destroy the pawns of the despised ancients. Because of the Tzimisce urge to grab and own and on all that stuff, the ancient Tzimisce have all this stuff that they've accrued over centuries, which understandably the younger Tzimisce don't have access to because it's not theirs and the others won't give it up, and so they're like, screw you, I'm going to eat you now. Which is a really, really kind of fun story arc to have for that whole clan. I looked through all of the books for references to the Sabbat and the Gehenna War and stuff like that. I don't actually like the Anarch or Camarilla books, but it sounds like the Sabbat book will actually be a rule book as opposed to just like little stories, which weren't that good. Apart from, actually one really, really good story. If you want to read about the Sabbat before the Sabbat book comes out, in the Anarch book, there's a really good one that's set in the 80s where a group of vampires wanted to live free, and so they went into the Amazon rainforest, and they just kind of lived off the natives and lived with families and existed there in peace, and tried not to hurt too many people in like feeding and just being on their own there as a group. But they found lots of vampires that had been turned. Lots of these community members had been turned, and they weren't sure why. And it turned out that a bunch of Sabbat had come into the rainforest and were causing havoc. They were murdering and drinking and turning lots of people into vampires just to cause havoc, because that's what they do. It's a really great story, and it's one of the best bits of the Anarch book, in my opinion. There is one other tidbit of information that I think is really cool, is that they are planning a release of the Book of Nod, which is an in-universe vampire Bible. Basically, it tells the story of Cain and Lilith and how he was cast out and all of that good stuff. I just love those diegetic objects from like fictional universes being made into physical objects that kind of just, you can exist and be like, oh, this is the thing from the thing. That's cool. I like that. And they're planning a release of the Book of Nod with Renegade. Is it Renegade Publishing? And yeah, I'm excited for that as well. But let me know in the comments what you think about this new Sabbat book, about the news and all of that. I know there are a lot of people that are not happy with this new Sabbat book, partially because of the fact that it won't include ways to be a player Sabbat. Like, if people want to play as Sabbat, there are older editions, you can homebrew it. Like, I'm not going to say you shouldn't play Sabbat if that's your jam, but a lot of trends in the people I've spoken to that want to play Sabbat, it feels like people want excuses to play out horrible scenes. And if you want to play out a horrible scene, good, but only if you have the consent of all of the people at the table. Like, literally everyone, they're all there. And like, I just want to hammer that home. Like, I see that a lot, and playing a Sabbat is great and fine, and you have fun, but everyone needs to be comfortable with what is happening at the table. That's all I'll say. It often the way people talk about it makes me feel uncomfortable, which is why I'm pretty happy that there's no player rules for it. But you do you. I'm not going to be at your table, so I don't care. As an example, I GM'd the table story game Leech, which includes a lot of extremely unpleasant scenes. It dealt with a lot of difficult topics and emotions, but during that entire thing, we were all communicating, players, everyone was very vocal about how they felt, if they didn't want to do something, and the players came to me with ideas for scenes. I vetoed some stuff, they vetoed some stuff, we were all happy with how it went down. We were all comfortable while it was happening, which is the most important thing. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now. Thank you for watching. If you are waiting for Stitch of Fate, the last 2 episodes are going through some extra editing, and we're also releasing for the Patreon a special GM video that Mathis has recorded. So that's why there wasn't an episode this week as I released this video. Just a reminder. But yeah, hopefully you're enjoying everything I'm doing on this channel. Subscribe for more, and until next time, goodbye.